Hi guys, welcome back to the next part of our series. Today I'm going to be doing something that we normally don't do in our course, and that is we're going to be going over a time lapse so that you can see how I pretty much place and modify all the different haircuts that we have in order to create the final haircut for our character. And the only reason we're doing this time lapse is because we want to save you several hours of me just fiddling around and trying what works the best for our particular hairstyle in the case of this character. So as you can see in the video here, I'm going, of course it's going really fast, it's summarizing most of the process, but you can see that the main tool that I'm using is I am bringing or grabbing the cards from our atlas, adding a couple of divisions to the different elements, and then modifying those divisions, those vertices with soft selection, placing them, rotating them, and pretty much making sure that they look the best possible way in our character. Now, if you remember when we talked about the hairstyle back in the first videos, the most important thing is that you need to check where the main volumes are. And in this case, as you can see here in a very fast way, is that I'm pretty much delineating the main volume of the hair, which is the spiky area on top. I'm using the main two cards, the most opaque cards that we generated in the past videos, to create the whole volume here. Now, hopefully this is not giving you a headache. I know that this is really fast, but again, it took me about 6 or 7 hours to place all the haircuts for the character, and then a couple of extra hours to do some minor tweaking here and there, but the process is pretty much the same. And throughout the process, you're gonna see me doing this. I'm gonna be bringing it into Marmoset, checking with the material, checking how it looks with the different lights. I'm going to be changing the lighting scenario several times, and I'm going to be tweaking and calibrating the material to get the best possible result. Now, halfway through the process, I realized that my density, the density of my cards, was a little bit too big for what I wanted. And even though it looked really nice up close, from far away, it just looked like very broad and very opaque strokes of hair, and it wasn't exactly what I was going for. So what I did there is I went all the way back to the baking process. I went to the collections from our XGen file, and I reduced the amount of hairs. I believe I went half the density. In this case, this is because that was the thing that worked the best for this character, but you're gonna see that for each specific character that you do, you might want to have either super thick and super opaque haircuts, or you're gonna go for very soft and very subtle haircuts. So the main focus for me in this particular area, in the top area, is to make sure that all the little spikes and little what's it called, like the clumps of hair, are going towards the middle, while at the same time maintaining the height. You're gonna see me there trying to accommodate the different haircuts in between each other, and making sure that all the gaps are as closely or as properly closed as possible, because it's really difficult to just populate the whole thing with haircuts. It makes it really heavy, and it's not optimal at all. So what you want to do is you want to try and kind of fill the gaps and see where the hair skin is, or the head skin is poking through, and just accommodate or place a couple of extra haircuts in those areas to make sure that it looks again the best possible way. You can see how I'm angling all of the cards towards the center, so that they give me this spiky feeling, this clumpy feeling of the hair, while at the same time I'm trying to cover as much as possible from that hair. The cool thing is, and that's not visible here in Maya, but once in Marmoset, you're gonna see that the hair is actually gonna project some shadow into the model. So I know that even though a couple of areas are visible in the Maya scene, they're not gonna be visible on the Marmoset scene. So this is the part where I realized that the hair was a little bit too, or not as good. Actually, no. Before that, I went ahead and I started placing the side areas of the hair, and I went for a very traditional process in which I tried to create the layers, the different layers for the sides of the hair, and it was looking okay. However, the issue was that it was getting really heavy. So by using one haircut and creating like several layers, it was a little bit difficult to keep the poly count low. At the end of the day, and you're gonna see it in just a few minutes, I ended up using just 2 layers for the side head, and I went back into my substance file and I adjusted the texture just a little bit to make it darker, so that most of the holes that would be visible from the side were not going to be there. So all of this that you're seeing right now, this is going to be obsolete in just a couple of minutes when we move forward into the other way in which I resolved the side view. It was looking okay. It was not a bad idea to do this that I'm doing. The only reason why I didn't choose this direction at the end was because the poly count was really high, because I needed so many cards to cover that much space, and it was not ideal for the whole character. You can see me there going back again into the atlas and extracting other parts of the haircuts that we baked in order to give it a little bit of variation, because you never want to use the same haircut for everything, otherwise things start looking very, very monotonous. So that's why we created a couple of variations, so that you can pretty much go in and change one of the things for the others, right? Like, just again, a little bit of variation. Now, it's very important there, and you're going to see me pushing the vertices in that specific part to give the direction that the hair actually has near the ear. Some hairs go above and around the ear, some go in the front or to the front of the ear. So just make sure that you check your reference really, really carefully, and you obey or follow those references the best possible in the best possible way that you can, so that you get the nicest result. Now, one thing that you're going to see me doing here is I am actually working on just one side of the head, and then I'm going to mirror everything to the other side. So again, I haven't done the rebaking of the textures here. This is another lighting test for the character. I'm going for more like a portrait looking thing, because I want to see how the rim light and like a basic 3-point lighting would work on the character. And as you can see, it's okay. I mean, the volume is there, but the fibers don't read as well. They read like big clumps, like big cards, and that's because the amount of fibers that we have is so big that from this distance, it's really difficult to see whether they look nice or not. So here you're gonna see me again going back into the placing of the hair cards. I of course took a couple of pauses throughout the process, because it tends to be a very tiring process, to be honest, both creatively and physically. You get like a bored, and you get a little bit frustrated from having to hand place everything. But to be honest, every single artist that I've asked about this, they all say that right now the best way is to do it in a manual way, like actually going in there and placing haircuts manually. Because otherwise, if you try to use a lot of different procedural techniques that there are out there, like maybe haircuts in ZBrush, or creating planes with XGen and then just mapping the texture, that usually don't give you the best control. So that's why nowadays in big studios, there's a position especially for people that are going to be doing hair, which is the groomers. And they're really, really sought out for, because their job is quite important, and a lot of people prefer not to do it just because it takes a lot of time. Similar to riggers, if you want to look for jobs that are never going to end and they're always going to be on demand, riggers is one of them. TDEs are really important, like particle guys and all that stuff. And hair is one of the things that, especially with the next gen video games, we're going to be seeing a lot of need for very realistic and cool looking hair. So either get used to the process and start enjoying it, or try to find a friend that's really good at it and form a team with them, because again, it's going to be really, really important. Once more, I'm extracting more haircuts from here. These are the shorter ones that we're going to be using for the blend in the size of the character. And yeah, at this point, again, I haven't done the thing I've mentioned, which is going back and remapping or rebaking all the textures from the hair. Now, the cool thing is, if you already have placed all your haircuts and you go back and rebake the stuff, it's going to update. It's going to pretty much, you might see a couple of extra holes that weren't there, because of course the density is slightly different, but most of the things that you've already done is going to be there. So as long as you work in the way that we've mentioned in the past video, go for the big shapes first, then the secondary shapes, and then the details at the end. Even if you need to do changes, it's not going to be that big of a deal, because you're going to be able to just update the whole textures and move along there. So yeah, one other reason why we didn't want to record the whole process in real time was because after a little bit I started just saying silly stuff, and you might be already bored about my sense of humor. So we didn't want you to quit midway through the project, because this is we're close to the final parts of the project. After the hair, we just need to finish the sword and continue with the rendering process, like do a couple of rendering changes there. I did notice that little thing on the back of the ear. That's a mask from Substance that's not working well. I fixed it later on. So on the final files, you should have the fixed ear there. And yeah, as you can see there, this is the issue that I was mentioning. Like I was trying to cover a lot of area with a lot of haircuts, and things were getting really, really heavy. For instance, right there, we were at 23K triangles, which is quite a bit. And even though it did look quite nice or nice-ish, it was not exactly what we were looking for in regards to optimization. I would rather have more triangles in other areas than the hair in this particular case, because that's not the most important part for the character, right? Like it's a very crucial part, but other parts like the armor, the head itself, all of those things are really, really important. So that's why we wanted to try and keep everything in the best possible way. So you're gonna see me in a couple of minutes, pretty much erasing all that stuff that I placed there and redoing it with just 2 or 3 layers of hair, which saved us quite a bit of polygons and it gave us a very, very nice result at the end. Short hair is one of those things that's really complicated. That's why most of the times you either see bald characters with no hair or characters with really long and messy hair. Messy hair tends to be a little bit easier because you can just get away with a lot of noise in the textures and that usually works. But when you want like a very nicely combed hair, it does take quite a bit of time to pretty much groom it in such a way that it looks as nice as possible. For female characters, something very similar happens. You're going to see most female characters have either just like a long, loose hair, or they will have, there will be like bald on one side and long hair on the other side. Like, people tend to be very smart about where to or how to do hair. One example where they do it very nicely is, for instance, Uncharted. Uncharted definitely went all the way out and did several different types of hairstyles for the characters, but there was a whole grooming department working on that. So that's another thing you need to take into consideration. When you're working at a studio, if it's a small studio, you are going to be expected to know and do a lot of the stuff. So you're going to have to do pretty much the whole process. But when you're working in big projects like, again, AAA games like Unreal or God of War and stuff like that, you're going to be faced with the situation where there's going to be a lot of people responsible for an asset. So maybe you're just going to be the sculptor or the texture artist or the groomer. You're probably not going to do one character from start to finish unless it's like a tertiary character or like a background character. But for main characters and stuff like that, there's a lot of people involved. Now you can see me placing some transition hairs. Those are the short hairs that we render on the border of the hair, and those are mainly to break up the silhouette a little bit and make sure that it doesn't look as intense as it was. So here you can see now that the texture is completely different. It's slightly less what's the word? Opaque. Like there's not a lot of fibers. This is the thing I was talking about. I went back and I just redid the maps of the hair by reducing the amount of hair strands per description, and I had to get rid of all the side hair there. And here it is, me replacing all that area. In this case, I went for the right side, and I started working my way on this area. As you can see, instead of going for short strands, I went for longer strands, and I tried to groom them towards the back. Again, taking into account to clear or cover as much space as possible with one card. One of the main mistakes that people make is they'll try to cover a small area with a lot of cards, and even though it might look good, it's not optimal. So you want to try and cover as much area with one card, and then you're going to go back and utilize all the different tools that we have, or the cards that we have to fill in the little holes that might be left in certain areas. So see how I'm angling the hair cards. So from the front, they're really going back, and then they start straightening up again towards the back, so that it's a little bit easier to transition there. And yeah, again, as I mentioned, this took me about, I think the main placement, it took me about 6 or 7 hours total. And then at the end, it was just a matter of tweaking stuff, like going into Marmoset, seeing what looked good, what didn't. Eyebrows to go a little bit because they were a little bit thin. So at the end of the day, I ended up using one of the short hairs instead of the eyebrow hairs. Yeah, after that, it's just a matter of tweaking again the lights, the materials in Marmoset with the techniques that we've talked about, and modifying the specularity and the glossiness to make sure that it looks either dry or wet, depending on how you want your hair to be. And that's it. So as you can see there, the transition on the sides looking really nice. Hair going back, and then here in the back, it's just pretty much like a waterfall of hair just falling down. I tried to capture, as I mentioned, the whole volume with just 2 hair cards. So one on going from the top to the middle, and then from the middle all the way down. And there's a little bit of a transition area in the middle that shows a little bit in the highlights back in the render, but it's not such a big deal that it detracts, and it allows us to have very optimized character at the end there. So after that, it's just a matter of using all the other cards, the ones that have less hair, and use them to cover all the little holes and places where you might seem to be missing a little bit of density, right? And again, going there for the transition hairs on the roots of the border of the hair to mask out where all of those hair curls are coming out, and then exporting everything and getting them ready in Marmoset. So yeah, I think that's it. At the end of the day, you just gotta go for it. It definitely takes some time. That's the eyebrows I was talking about. Like I started using these eyebrows at first, but at the end of the day, I realized that they were really really thin, and I would need like a lot, like triple the amount of polygons that I was working or expecting to have to get them to work. So I ended up using one of the short hairs as well to give them volume, and it's a little bit of a mix between these guys, the small guys, and what's it called, and the other guys, the big dense hairs there. And yeah, again, it's just trial and error, guys. It definitely takes some time. If this is your first character, or if this is the first time you do hair for a character, you might need a little bit more time than I use here, just because it definitely is one of those processes that needs to be very, very manually, or it's very manually intensive, and therefore it definitely takes some time. So be patient. Again, as I recommended, go for your best drink, your best playlist, and just try to get in the zone and knock this out in as few sessions as possible. It's gonna make your life so much easier. So you can see there, that's the final result. It looks really, really nice, and that's what we're looking for. So with nothing else to add, I'll see you back on the next video where we continue working on the rest of the elements.